There was a fascinating panel on Vice about masculinity. Did they have to say something interesting? Let's check. Let's dive into it.
We are.
That's right. I think that historically, being a man was rooted in patriarchy and misogyny. And now we realize how harmful that has been over the years. And so we don't really know how to define where we're supposed to be.
Hold on. Masculinity is about taking responsibility as a man. Masculinity has been created for the benefit of women and children. Back in the day, we used to have chivalry, which is basically using men's strength, the benefit of their physical strength and mental strength, in order to provide and protect for their wife and for their kids. It was all about setting up an environment when all of this strength, men's strength, can be used for the benefit of the kids and the mother. Patriarchy is the opposite of misogyny. It's basically acknowledging women's differences and catering for these differences. Today, feminism is doing the very opposite, ignoring women's differences and trying to push women to become much more like men. And even if you think about changing the world, changing the patriarchy, in history, there was never ever a matriarchal society. How come? How come they never survived? I think it's very clear, because it's not optimized. It's not optimized in the sense that you optimize the resources. When you can't acknowledge differences, you can't use the best element of each of the gender. The best element of men on one side, the best element of women on the other side. And this is what patriarchy is about. It's about using scarce resources and optimizing scarce resources. Unfortunately, more and more we are seeing a trend where the society is shifting from logic to emotion. It's all about someone's feeling. It's all about how they feel instead of what it is. And today, if we don't acknowledge someone's experience, we are not even allowed to ask questions about the experience. We have to acknowledge without using our brains to challenge if someone says something that just doesn't make any sense. So now it's all about emotion. And this is the shift, because matriarchal societies are more emotional based and patriarchal societies are more logical based. Let's continue.
In a hetero, right? Because if you do anything, women judge you.
What do you mean anything?
If I dance a certain way, or if I wear my hair a certain way, if I dress a certain way, they go, real men don't do that. Real men don't do that. And so you get scared to move a certain way because you don't want to get judged or outed out of the accepted part of your community. And I think that kind of has us in an uproar, and we don't know where to be. Like, where's the safe place to be?
Despite so many years of brainwashing, women still want masculine men. That's a fact. The fact that this guy doesn't understand this is shocking. Yes, women want masculine men. Women want competent men. They don't like whiners. They don't like complainers. They want people that can fix their issues, resolve their problems. And this is what a competent man should be. A weak man has no use for a woman. So if a man can't even handle his own issues, if a man can't even handle his own problems, how can he be an asset in a family? He's going to become a burden. And you've seen it again and again in societies and in families. When a man is not competent, the whole family is going to be put into the sink. Because men that can't provide for their family, they can't protect their family, end up destroying their families. And this is where you see terms like toxic masculinity. Because these men can't handle their own feelings. And I'm very surprised about the word that he uses. Safe space. Who needs a safe space? Men don't need safe space. Men create safe space for others. That's the whole purpose of a strong man. A strong leader will create a safe space for his family. That's what men do. Men protect their family, provide for them, making sure that in the house, in the home, they are safe. When a man is seeking safe spaces everywhere, it clearly indicates that this man is not a very strong man. How can you ask, where are the safe spaces? We should be creating safe spaces for others. And this is why men should be competent. Men should be strong so they can protect their family against other people. If you're weak, you can't do anything. You can't provide. You can't protect. Very shocking choice of words using safe space all the time. Also, men need to take risk. Men need to overcome chaos. And this is why and how they can succeed, by taking risk. If they are always seeking safe space, they can't build things. This is why men build. Men build and create things. Take risk. That's what we do. I think these men lack a bit of masculinity. What's next?
This is non-binary. How does this conversation strike you?
Well, I think that it kind of becomes like irrelevant whether or not we attribute like having like a good ethical compass to being like masculine. Attributing that to like the gender constructs which we have made up, which are like somewhat pointless, like kind of just feed into needless roles that uphold the patriarchy without even knowing it. A lot of those things are just things that people should be doing because they're like morally right. Like if you're in a family, you should probably support your family. And I really don't think that it has to do with like your manhood.
Let me tell you one thing. In order to achieve, you need to have principles. You need to have values. These values are going to drive you to become a disciplined man, a strong man. You need to have developed this part of stoicism. If you haven't developed this part, you cannot be competent. And of course, the values that you have are going to transcribe into the action that you are going to carry out in the world. If you do not have the strong values, you cannot translate them into strong actions. Masculine men have strong principles that lead them to achieve and to be loyal to their partners, to be loyal to the business people that they are dealing with. And this is why they become competent and valued in society. They become valued in their business partners because they are reliable, they are congruent. When they say that they are going to do something, you know for sure that they are going to do it. And this is why this guy is saying that there is no correlation between ethical values and achievement. There's a direct correlation because people that tend to achieve are the people that have strong values, strong principles. If you don't believe in any type of moral, why would a man support his family? If you believe that everything is a social construct, why would any man support their family? It's very different than anything that happens in the animal kingdom. Animals, especially males, once they mate, they usually invest very little in their offspring. So why would any man invest in their kids and support their family? So you can see the nonsense of this argument. In order to be a good man, you need to have strong ethical values, which are going to lead you to strong ethical choices, like for example, supporting a family. And these values that are inherent and that are taken for granted all come from the same places, most of the time in Western societies. They come from religion, and especially Christianity, that has been predominantly the religion in Western countries. Let's continue.
Well, first I think that like attributing like proper family values to like a heterosexual couple with children is like just not effective. Like I think that it's obviously like a heteronormative take to be like man and woman and then a child, and that's how you create like a good family. And whether it's like a single mother, single father, or like a queer couple, like I don't think that it's necessary to like attribute men and women to like certain roles in the household. I think that it's only due to nurture those gender norms that we follow.
Look at the face of the host. He just can't believe what he just heard. It's only due to nurture. Does this guy even read anything? Does this guy know anything about science? If he knew anything about science, this is pure garbage. Of course, there's a part of nurture, but there's a huge part of nature as well. Men and women are different. It's been quite well documented in the social science, in the evolutionary psychology book, pretty much everywhere. Everyone that wants to know the differences, feel free to watch this video. But it's very clear that men and women are different. So this guy, this queer guy, is regurgitating everything that he has learned, everything that he has been brainwashed with. You can replace this guy with another social justice warrior and they are going to say the very same thing because they don't really think for themselves. When you think about it, it's very clear and it's evidence-based that a kid is raised better by both of his biological or her biological parents. It's been proven for sure. Now, when it comes to single-parent household, mothers try to do a good job, but on average, fathers do a better job at raising their kids in terms of single mother versus single father. And now, the next part is that if you have to raise a kid needs both of masculine and feminine role models. So ideally, a kid has to be raised by his or her biological parents. If it's not possible, ideally this kid needs both of masculine and feminine role models. And this argument about it's all about nurture has been debunked so many times. But if you have a doubt, feel free to read The Blank Slate by Steven Pinker. In this book, he just deconstructs this argument. It's never about only nurture. Nature has a huge part into it. And if you want to dive into more the scientific facts, in the womb, the embryos get exposed to testosterone when they are male. This changes the shape of their brain. And this is why when they are born, male babies and female babies are already different. Female babies tend to observe the facial expressions much more than male babies. And male babies tend to be better at geometrical things, observing geometrical objects. And even when they are babies, female babies are more attracted to people, and this is also one of the reasons girl babies tend to speak much earlier than boys, and boy babies tend to be attracted to things much more. And it is translated even when they grow older and become men and women. If you came here, it means that you really enjoyed the video. So please subscribe, it will really help me. Let's continue.
What privileges are you referring to? Like what privileges do men have?
We've constructed this entire society to benefit us.
Break it down, like what privileges exactly?
Like we talk about the wage gap, or if you look at Roe versus Wade, men controlling women's bodies.
It's tiring to see these guys regurgitating what they have learned. The wage gap has been debunked so many times. We know for a fact that it's the multivariable equations that lead to the pay. So just restricting it to gender doesn't make any sense. And most of the issues are between mothers and the rest of the world. When it comes to the gender pay gap, let's take an example. So this woman is like 25. She has just joined the workplace and she's starting to work her way up the company. Obviously, she has lots of these ideas, feminist ideas in her mind, and she wants to be able to prove that she can compete with men. So what she does is she works really, really hard. She starts climbing the corporate ladder, one step at a time. She's even climbing much quicker than some of their male counterparts. She's studying, she's learning every single day. She's becoming a more and more competent professional every day. After 10 years, she's in charge of the whole country of that specific company. After 20 years, 25 years, she eventually becomes CEO. So this woman that has worked her ass off, that has climbed the ladder every single step, she understands what needs to be done. She understands what it takes in order to be successful. and that women can contribute very well to the success of a company as well, because she's a woman and she knows it. Do you really believe that this woman that finally gets to the top of the company, that becomes CEO, will observe the gender pay gap and not think for 1 second that she can optimize her cost? Instead of hiring men and women, she will just fire all the men and just hire women. But none of these female CEO, very smart lady, very dedicated to their work, very professional, decided to do it. Why? Are they stupid? If it is the same to hire a woman that costs 20% less than a man, why would she not hire only women? It just doesn't make any sense. The only possible explanation is that even if it is not said out loud, it's maybe covert, she acknowledges that the gender pay gap is just a hoax. It's just a myth. A myth to sell paper for journalists. And at the end of the day, she knows that men are getting paid more, usually because there are other factors. For example, the fact that women tend to stop most of the time, take part-time jobs as well. Women also tend to work less hours than men. They get less experiences. And as a result, they get paid less. These women that are very smart, if the gender pay gap was real, they wouldn't hesitate to only hire women. I can tell you this. And they will probably be much more cost efficient than all of these other companies. They will lead the competition. But that's not the case, because we all know this is a myth, and myth cannot be proven. Regarding the second point of Roe versus Wade, this guy talks about men forces women on their body autonomy. But there are 3 bodies in question: the man's body, the woman's body, and the baby's body. So I don't think we are talking only about one person here. It's 3 people involved in this equation. And all Roe versus Wade did, so the decision by the Supreme Court did, is to defer the decision to the state. Because what is written in the Constitution doesn't support a right for abortion. As simple as that. It doesn't mean that women cannot have abortion, but this is delegated to the state. And obviously, as a human being, if you don't like the laws of your government or your state, you're very free to change state or change countries as well.
Be those privileges, there's also more men who commit suicide, more men incarcerated.
I think when you talk about like incarceration rates and things like that, like things that men are a victim of, I think that it's important to like recognize, like, I don't think that men are oppressed solely on the grounds that they're men. I think that men like experience oppression based on like the intersections of their identities, which is, you know, why we see like different like lower class jobs being worked by men, or like higher suicide rates, or like incarceration rates going up, because like men, like black men, brown men, indigenous men, queer men, trans men, etc., those people like face oppression, they experience oppression, but it's not solely due to their identity as a man.
This guy is really tiring. He keeps talking nonsense. Police is 24 times more likely to shoot a boy than a girl. If a boy commits minor crimes, he gets 63% longer sentence. That's solely based on the gender. Not acknowledging that there are discriminations based on gender is not knowing the facts, and is just talking purely out of emotions without having the research and the studies to support it. When you don't have the data, just don't say anything. I'm just very surprised that this guy keeps talking about things without having done any type of research before. Another example, the drive that only impacts men. When it comes to war in Ukraine, you can see it now. All the men cannot leave the country. The women and the kids are leaving. But men have to fight solely based on the fact that they are male. It's not based on anything else, just on the fact that they are men. So of course there are discrimination solely based on gender for male. If you think about what he just said, he just keeps bringing everything back to himself. And this is what they do, social justice warriors. They only talk about themselves. So it's going to bring the conversation from an interesting topic about why men get discriminated to something that he can place himself as the victim. Queer people get discriminated, black people get discriminated. That's not the topic. Why are you always classifying yourself as a victim when most of the time these people are the most privileged? And just classifying yourself as a victim doesn't make sense all the time. That's juicy. Let's
Guys, when you
continue.
think about what the MeToo movement did, has it gone too far? What does it mean for you?
I think it's good for women to expose men who are doing evil things in the workplace. I think it's been a good thing in exposing sexual abuse. There's also the opposite side of that coin where women are allowed privilege to do certain things that men are not. So in the workplace, I was working in a place where a woman was grabbing me inappropriately, doing things that were inappropriate. And when you bring that up to your coworkers, you know what they say? They laugh and they say, you should be excited, right? So if a man is sexually abused, the stigma totally changes.
Well, I
Same
don't think
thing I
Me
say.
Too necessarily like is what prevented people from believing you and your story. And like your story is valid, like I'm not here to suppress that, but I do think that like it's worth noting women are far more likely to be victims of sexual assault.
Pretending that you do care about other people's experiences while clearly showing that you don't care about it. It's always the most virtue signalers that are the worst at applying what they ask others to do. So he wants other people to acknowledge his life experience, but at the same time, someone tells like a shocking story about sexual abuse, and all he says is that it doesn't really matter because women are more likely to get abused. So your story doesn't really matter. We can take a similar story. Someone saying it doesn't really matter that you're getting beaten up by your wife because wives are much more likely to experience physical abuse. Does it make any sense? On the other side, I'm very happy about the point of the first man, the cowboy man. Yes, MeToo has been very useful in that sense, exposing wicked actions, people doing wicked things, and I'm supporting it. When the woman is honest and speaking up against this type of abuse, that should be celebrated. And there's another side as well of it, is that these wicked men committing wicked actions should be imprisoned. And they should stay in prison for a long time, especially when it's proven and supported by evidence. The issue that I have with it, following the MeToo movement, we went from innocent until proven guilty to guilty until proven innocent. And that's not how our justice system works. This is not how the society has been built. For me, we have to be congruent. If we have a justice system which is innocent until proven guilty, then fair enough, we need to believe women. But we need to have clear evidence in order to sentence someone. It's not about just pure feelings or he says, she says. It has to be evidence-based. Otherwise, we can't have a justice system. It just doesn't work. And we have seen the abuse of this with cases like Amber Heard, for example, with Johnny Depp. So not all women should be trusted. Some women lie. Yes, some women lie. Some men do as well. But that's something that we were not allowed to say a few years ago, that some women lie. But that's the truth. So we have to be consistent in our approach. If we say that we are innocent until proven guilty, this has to be the case for everyone, even the people we don't like. Let's continue.
Up in a super masculine house, we don't really like to admit weakness.
Well, and it's in our language, right? Like, don't be a bitch. Like, don't be a pussy.
Right.
Like, it's very
We
real.
internalize that.
Yeah, that's all examples of like toxic masculinity. Like it's never to invalidate somebody's experience, but like it must be obvious that like these
are rules and roles enforced by men and created by men.
These are not rules created by men and enforced by men. Women do not like weak men. Weakness is never an advantage in society. I'm not talking about vulnerability, which is different. And we should show vulnerability in the right environment. But being weak doesn't help. And women don't like weak men. And usually it's the women that do not like when the man is weak. These previous guys were saying earlier that when he used to go on a date and complain about life, these dates were not successful. He didn't used to see the woman again after. But when he started to behave more masculine, without a victim mentality, like a strong man, he started to become more successful. So who is putting the pressure on the men to not be weak? It's the society, but it's especially women. If you're a man and you want to be able to find a mate, a partner for life, it's going to be very difficult for you if you're weak. You have to be strong. And women expect the man to be strong, a strong leader that can drive the family into the right direction. As I said earlier, if you cannot handle your own issues, how are we going to be able to handle the issues of the family when things are very complicated? Or if someone comes and break into your house and you're a weak man, you're going to leave your family to defend itself. You're going to leave your wife. You're going to start running very fast and leave your wife behind. That's not what women want. That's not the type of society we want to build, where men cannot defend their own family. And this is why we need strong men. And this is why women are shaming weak men. And other men are also shaming weak men in order for them to grow a pair of balls. And at the end of the day, if you're a weak man, and that's your decision, you want to behave weak, whatever, it is your choice. But don't complain about the consequences. If you do not work on yourself to become better, to become stronger, to become more competent, and you're weak, and you're happy to stay weak, in that case, you shouldn't be surprised about the consequences. You have to accept the consequences of your decisions. If you're weak and you don't want to do anything, then so be it. But don't complain about it, because that's the issue. Weak men often complain about the situation they are in. If you've decided to become weak and to stay weak, then live with the consequences. Let's continue.
Well, great if a man is dating a woman and she doesn't like that he's not masculine enough. It's kind of like, to me, I feel like too bad for him. He should go find someone else. That's part of the dating scene. Everyone has things that they like and things that they don't like.
I feel like your preference is your preference, but at like some point I think it's like noteworthy and responsible to like understand where those preferences or like originate.
Not necessarily. I think our life experiences form what we really want in our dating life. And because I grew up in a broken home and I didn't have a man in the house, I want a man who gives me security and protection. I don't think me deconstructing masculine is gonna do that for me. I was missing that in my childhood, and that's what I want in a man.
I tend to diverge from like the Freudian daddy issue stuff when it comes to like what
Congratulations, I'm so happy for you. I want a man who gives me security.
Thank you.
It's always fascinating to see two men argue, but like more like women, in the sense that they are going to argue like a cat, like it's a cat fight. It's really funny because men usually don't argue like this at all. That's not the way men communicate. Men tend to be more straightforward and don't use covert language. But that's what's quite funny. Men, according to society, cannot have preferences. And that's a huge issue, in my opinion. Men preferences get shown upon. And that happens all the time. every single time a man will express his preferences, I don't want a woman that is overweight. Body positivity. I just want to date biological women. You're transphobe. I want to date more traditional women. You can't handle a modern woman. You can't handle a feminist. You have all these type of terms for men, and they cannot express their preferences. Every time they will express them, they're going to be shut down. Even in this conversation in between men, you will have one that will be expressing that he wants to find a partner that is strong and masculine. And the other guy is going to make fun of him for his preferences. That's not nice. That's not how we should behave. Is it not the same guy that was preaching about respect that is now ignoring someone else's experience? So it's the same type of social justice warriors. They are all the time preaching, messaging about accepting other people's experiences. But they are the first one to criticize other people. They are the first one not to accept someone else's preference. As soon as someone is going to speak up against it, they're going to quickly try to shut them down. And this is why this type of social justice warriors, like this queer guy, are the worst, because they are not congruent. They are going to be asking a specific behavior from other people that they cannot give other people. That's not being congruent. That's not being logical. Interesting, let's continue.
If I'm with a woman and the bad dates I've had is when I'm like talking about my problems, I'm complaining about something, I'm not gonna see that woman. If I'm projecting more strength, I'm more charismatic, I'm positive, I'm probably gonna see that woman. But I think as much as like guys, you know, you want guys to be vulnerable, that doesn't work a lot of times. And I think it just comes down to that.
That's exactly what I was saying earlier. It's not about men's preferences or men have pushed this narrative on other men. It usually comes down to women. If you want to be able to secure a woman and have a family with that woman, you better be a strong man. Because when you're not, you're more likely to be taken to court. You're more likely for your family to break down. And that's the reality of the matter, even if you don't want to accept it. Weak men don't tend to have families. There are actually quite a lot of weak men in society and throughout history that never had kids. A lot of men didn't have kids because these women didn't want to have kids with them. If you're weak men, you have to accept the consequences of not being strong. And more likely, you're not going to be able to have a family because most women will not want to be with you. Let's watch the last extract.
Saying that there is a good and natural connection between like feeling good, healthy habits, looking good, and that there's a masculine ideal to that of some sort. Does anyone disagree with that here?
I do. Body diversity exists across like multiple spectrums, and I think that it's unfair to like only attribute like mental fortitude and like mental strength to like physical strength. Not having like a perfectly in shape body doesn't necessarily mean you're unhealthy by any means, and I also don't think it necessarily means that you like lack mental fortitude.
If you have an unhealthy body, you're probably missing a lot of good values, good qualities. You probably do not have discipline. You probably do not have stoicism. You probably cannot stay consistent. So all of these qualities that are used in order to be healthy are the same qualities that are going to be used in order to be competent and successful in life. If you do not have this type of attributes, if you cannot exercise delayed gratification, then you're not going to be successful because you're going to be driven by your emotions. You're going to be driven by your pleasures. You're going to be a slave of your pleasures. And these people tend not to be successful because they can't control themselves. They become slaves. They become drug addicts. They become sex addicts. And they become obese as well because they can't control how much they eat. So that's not healthy. And not being able to describe what a healthy body is, despite the body positivity movement, healthy body usually tend to be correlated with longer lives. And that's supported by all studies. So if you have a good BMI, a low fat percentage, you will probably live longer life on average. It doesn't mean that it's going to cover you against any type of diseases or cancer, but you're much more likely to live a longer life. So of course, there's a correlation between health and the body that you have. And usually to have a healthy body, you need to have good qualities, good values that are going to lead you to have this healthy body. Consistent, discipline, delayed gratification. All these type of qualities are going to be useful for you to have a healthy body and to become successful in life. If you like this reaction video, you will like the Vice reaction video for feminists. It was really heated. In a different conversation in between feminists, Vice inviting a feminist panel to discuss about feminine issues. It was really heated. I recommend you to watch it.